she walked into her doctor's office and said she would really like to be assessed to see whether or not she might have early stage Alzheimer's. And the doctor just looked at her and said, "Why would you want to know?" That's a lack of understanding how important an early diagnosis is. The benefit of knowing is that you can start making plans. If you wait until you're no longer competent yourself, then somebody else is going to make that decision for you, and you're going to have nothing to say about it, whether you like it or not.
Welcome to In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard.
Today we're joined by Marcia Rauwerdink. She's a volunteer advocate and board member for the Alzheimer's Association here in the state of Missouri. She's been a volunteer advocate for the Alzheimer's Association for 17 years.
You're aging me.
She's a member of the Greater Missouri Chapter Board of the Alzheimer's Association and on the executive committee. She is active in public policy, advocacy, and community educator for the association. And then she's also a member of the Alzheimer's Impact Movement Leadership Society.
Perfect.
Impressive. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're really glad you're here. So let me just kick it off right off the bat. What do most people not know about the Alzheimer's Association?
I would say the main reason I'm here. I think people know about our fundraising for research through Walk to End Alzheimer's. They know that we have support groups. A lot of people are aware of our education efforts, and I am a community educator for the association as well. But very few people, I believe, know about how much energy and work advocates do for the association with Congress, both at the federal level and at the state level. And that's not something that people would normally think about. But those legislative priorities, and I'll explain a few of them as we go through the interview, are very, very important for the individuals who are dealing with this disease and for their caregivers.
Right on. So let's dig in. What if you're going to educate us all on this, please proceed.
Is it okay if I start with a little bit of history?
Please
because
do.
people are not aware of
Love
this.
it.
So I was asked in 2011 when that new Congress was put in place. It was the same time that the Alzheimer's Association formed a very, very successful group that I'm surprised that other nonprofits haven't mimicked so far, called the Ambassadors. And an ambassador is someone who is responsible to keep their member of Congress informed about legislative priorities, help twist their arm and push them to co-sponsor legislation, and keep them informed of research progress, because we are every year asking for increased funding for research at the National Institutes of Health. And so they started this ambassador program, and what that means is that every member of the House of Representatives and every member of the Senate is assigned one ambassador. So there are 535 of us across the country, all 50 states, Hawaii and Alaska included. And it's proven, that was back in 2011. And I had been going to Jefferson City to advocate at the state level on Memory Day, which for us is coming up on March 10th in Jefferson City. And I got a phone call from the executive director that said, "Marcia, would you be willing to step up to the federal level for advocacy for public policy?" And I said, first of all, I was incredibly honored. And second of all, I said, "You bet." So I am currently the ambassador assigned to Missouri District 7, which is currently Representative Eric Burleson. It's been a very, very successful program.
Wow,
and I'm in my 15th year. and it'll be my 14th, it'll be my 16th trip to Washington this June. We missed 1 year because of COVID.
So speaking of legislative priorities, what are they right now?
Right now, we have two main legislative priorities plus a funding request, which we always have. The funding request this year was, we were asking for a $113 million increase for Alzheimer's and dementia research at the National Institutes of Health. We know at this point that the Senate Finance Committee, which is led by our biggest champion, Susan Collins from Maine, and another huge champion, Patty Murray from Washington, who is the ranking member on the committee, they have recommended a $100 million increase, and the House has recommended a $15 million increase. So we hope that when everything goes through the budget blender, that the number's closer to the Senate number than it is to the House number. When I first started doing this advocacy work, and my very first year as an ambassador, the funding for Alzheimer's research at the National Institutes of Health was $450 million. We are now at, I'm thrilled to say because I lived through all of this, we are now at $3.7 billion, $3.7 billion in funding at the NIH for Alzheimer's and dementia research. Now, we've got about 8 million Americans at this point in time. But what that translates to, do the math, is we're closer to 50 cents of investment for everybody who is impacted by this disease instead of 10 cents. And I always like to say, I will take that bet on a stock any day of the week.
How does that compare to something like cancer?
We don't compare it because we're not interested in fighting over, is cancer more important than Alzheimer's? Is HIV/AIDS more important than Alzheimer's? We don't go there.
That was the funding request. What are the two main priorities?
The other legislative priorities are, it's a bill, Washington, D.C. loves their acronyms. The bill is called the ASAP Act, as soon as possible. No, it fits though, right? It's the Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act. It is intended to provide the Secretary of Health and Human Services the ability to say, if we have a new early diagnostic tool, because one of the things that we now know is early diagnosis, especially now that we have two drugs that have been FDA approved. And in May, we just had a blood test approved by the FDA. Now, why is that a big deal? That's a big deal because prior to this blood test, the only way that you got diagnosed for Alzheimer's was you either had to have a spinal tap, or most people cringe, or a PET scan, which is very expensive, and or the cognitive tests that a doctor can give, which is always very kind of iffy and dicey. Now we have a blood test that is sort of trickling down into, I'll be the first one to say, if you walked into a doctor in Mercy today and said, give me a Lumaphase blood test, they might or might not have that available yet. Because it takes time for these things to trickle down once the FDA approves them. But what this bill is intended to do is to say, okay, once the FDA approves one of these early screening tools, the Secretary of Health can then say to Medicare, you will cover this.
So
So that's one.
that's one. Okay. Okay. I was making sure there wasn't two. Like that
No,
was
that's
our two.
one.
Okay.
So that one just was assigned bill numbers last week. So I'm going to be getting letters out to my representatives and senators to say, please co-sponsor the ASAP Act because this is really, really important for people to get early diagnosis. And this is now a test that can be available to people without having to drive 4 to 6 hours in order to be diagnosed. The second act that is on our list is an act that was introduced in the prior Congress but did not get through the pipeline. Is called the ADAPT Act, and it's with 2 A's, AADAPT. This is really, really important because one of the things that I was shocked by when I first started doing this work was that primary care physicians and clinicians, when they were in medical school, received zero education on dementia. None. And so even today, I was just talking to a woman last week, and she had walked into her doctor's office. She has Alzheimer's in the family, and she walked into her doctor's office and said she would really like to be assessed to see whether or not she might have early cognitive impairment or early stage Alzheimer's. And the doctor just looked at her and said, "Why would you want to know?"
Oh.
That's just a lack of knowledge. That's a lack of understanding how important an early diagnosis is. Now, everybody's an individual, everybody's different. Some people don't want to know. And the main reason, when you talk to somebody who doesn't want to know, the main reason they give you is because if there's no cure, and there's no cure today, if there's no cure, I don't want to know. I understand that completely. However, the benefit of knowing is that you can start making plans. You can make sure you've got your financial affairs in order. You can make sure you've got all of the legal documentation in place so that should you get to a point where you need to be placed in a skilled nursing facility or you're no longer competent to handle your own affairs, you've got that durable power of attorney in place with someone you trust. You're still competent to go to or several facilities and say, you know what? That facility is a place I'd be comfortable. That facility is not. If you wait until you're no longer competent yourself, then somebody else is going to make that decision for you. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have nothing to say about it, whether you like it or not. And so it is really important. So those are the two priorities, the ASAP Act and the ADAPT Act, and then our financial research funding request. So when we go to Washington in June, those are the three things we're going to be talking to our legislators about.
Yeah, when you talk about $370 billion,
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
We're getting really close to the defense budget right now, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
As far as how much this disease is costing us.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm hoping that we can get this act through and get more primary care physicians to recognize when they're dealing with someone who in fact looks like they're having signs of dementia. Now, it's really important that people go to their primary care physician if they think there's something wrong, because there are other causes. Mm-hmm. Stress is a cause of symptoms that look like dementia, but aren't. Another main cause and another reason to go to your primary care physician is it could be a vitamin deficiency. You might be running really low on B12. Another reason is you may be taking medications that are fighting one another, conflicting with one another. I was in a hospital room. My husband was in the hospital for surgery, and the man in the next bed his wife said, had 13 pill bottles on his counter in his bathroom. And he didn't know what any of them were for. But he was only taking 4 of them. But when the anesthesiologist came in and said, "What are you taking?" He said, "Well, I'm taking 4, but I don't know which 4 I'm taking." And
Oh no.
horror stories, absolute horror stories. But that's how come if you see those kinds of signs, if you feel like there's something wrong, and most people recognize, hey, I'm not. Denial is one of the most common things, but it's very important for physicians to be able to get the blood work done to figure out, because you know what? If it's conflicting medications, that's easy. You can solve that. If you're short on vitamin B, that's easy. You can solve that. If it's hormones, you can, prescribe different drugs. If it's stress, you can help the person with that too. But it's very important to rule out the easy stuff. And then you can get down to the tough stuff. So that's how come we really want to get primary care physicians and clinicians better educated on this, just because they didn't receive any education in med school, which I've personally, when I first found that out, I was appalled. But it's just a fact.
Yeah.
So do you guys have certificates or educational programs for people that are caregivers or people that work with elder care, like home health agencies, hospice agencies,
Yes.
home care agencies?
Yes, we do.
What are those?
We actually have a whole battery of programs, and as a community educator, I present several of those. We have a battery of programs to present to help caregivers. We also have, I call it an introductory program. That's basically what are the facts and figures about this thing, this horrible thing. And I do a program called the 10 Warning Signs, which is one of my favorites to present. And you would say, well, why is that? That sounds kind of scary. But what I love about that program is that I not only talk about the 10 warning signs, but I talk about what's not a warning sign. So here's my best example. What are the 2 things you lose the most? Your cell phone and your car keys. And as soon as you lose your cell phone or your car keys, most people go, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting Alzheimer's." That's very common. That's normal. You walk into the house, the phone rings, you walk across the kitchen, you put your phone down, you put your keys down in a place where you wouldn't normally put them. That's not a sign of Alzheimer's. And the number of people that walk out of those programs looking at me going, "Thank you, I'm so relieved," because there's a lot of things that people mistake for signs of Alzheimer's that really aren't. And so I love the 10 Warning Signs program. So we have this battery of educational programs that we present for caregivers. And then additionally, we have 10 Ways to Love Your Brain, the 10 Warning Signs, the introductory program, how to have the tough conversations about going to the doctor, driving, financial concerns, et cetera. So we have a broad spectrum of programs, and I've given several of those to skilled facilities and to nursing classes at Missouri State University, which I love. That's really great. So great question. Thank you.
And do you guys, what kind of certificates do you guys offer? For
We
people as well?
don't.
You don't? Okay.
Right. We don't. That's a whole different
Wing.
But at least what we're doing is getting that awareness out there and helping people understand, what they're seeing, what they're dealing with, and whether or not they really are dealing with a risky situation or not. So, but yeah, the certificate thing, we're leaving that up to the institutes of higher education and other places that do that kind of thing. The association itself no longer provides that kind of training, if you will, certificate training. Yeah. We just provide awareness training and kind of help support people through this process.
Awesome.
in 2026, we're going to spend some of our time diving into issues around elder abuse in all of its different forms. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there regarding that specifically, but I can't think of a group that is more vulnerable to the different forms of elder abuse than people with
No.
dementia and Alzheimer's. But I think it would be the easy button would be to vilify the perpetrator of different forms of elder abuse. But the thing we really want to exemplify, I guess, or bring to the surface is that so much of it is connected to caregiver burnout.
Yes.
And again, I just can't think of a group that could potentially be more vulnerable than people who care for folks with dementia and Alzheimer's.
They're very vulnerable, and the individuals they care for are incredibly variable. I have so many horror stories. I know a gentleman in Springfield who, what had happened was, before his family recognized what they were dealing with his physical condition, a woman recognized the symptoms and befriended him. And she didn't know him very long, but before the family was able to catch up with it and what was going on, he had bought her a new car. He had turned over some assets to her name. And that happens all the time. And the family started to see, look, there's something wrong here. You know, how come Dad's checkbook balance is, not where it used to be? But this woman recognized the symptoms and took advantage of it. She wasn't involved with him in any way. She didn't care about anything except taking advantage of him.
Yeah.
So if you're focusing that in 2026, that's fantastic, because it's a very serious problem, and it's all too common.
Yeah.
And it makes my blood boil.
Yeah, and the thing is that what we're wanting to do is help people recognize the warning signs in other people and in those patients or friends or family members, but also to kind of start to recognize when they're start to see it in themselves. They're getting close to burnout, and they need to be reaching out for support and that sort of thing. And most of my experience is that most of that point in which they're ready to reach out for help, it's been going on way too long.
Yes.
And they're just kind of at the end of their rope. And that frustration and that burnout is so acute that, they're just trying to function. And that's really all they can do. But the thing that, you bring to the surface is that most family members don't really know what to do.
They don't.
They don't know how to intervene. They know it's a problem, and they're just bewildered because mom or dad are still somewhat independent,
Right.
but not enough that
Right.
that they can take over, so to speak, or control the situation.
And you have so many factors and so many levers going on in that situation. Because one of the symptoms is paranoia. A lot of caregivers or would-be caregivers are, and this is where the educational program that we have called Difficult Conversations comes in, is it's really hard to have that conversation with a parent about going to the doctor. It's really hard to broach the subject of power of attorney because of the predominance or common occurrence of paranoia in these individuals. The first thing that occurs to them is that my son or daughter is wants my money. And so children are reluctant to even broach the subject. And so that's a very delicate situation to deal with, but you also can't ignore it. A serious thing in your comment about caregiver burnout is also very serious. One of the very scary statistics is that 2/3 of caregivers end up with diseases that are even more serious. And it's hard to say more serious because, Alzheimer's is like the most horrible thing in the world. But they end up with a very serious illness because they're not taking care of themselves. And of course, they're not taking care of themselves. I'm very familiar with that situation. You don't have time to go to the doctor. Now, one of the things, I don't know if you're aware, that we do have this program in Missouri, which is a caregiver support funding program. And they changed the name of it like 3 times, so I'm not going to be able to get the name right today, but I can get you the name if you're not familiar with it. But we do have a program for it. Used to be called respite funding. And what the program does is if you are taking care of someone, they have to still be living in your own home or with you somewhere. But if you're the primary caregiver, there's no financial restrictions on this. You don't have to have a certain income level. The individual just has to be living with you. And you apply for a respite care, I'll call it a respite care grant. And the respite care grant can be anything from paying for a day of assisted care help so that you can take a day off. And maybe all you do is go to lunch with a best friend or something, but you're able to get out. It can pay for a half day of care by an agency like yours to help someone be able to go to the dentist, to be able to go to the doctor, go watch a movie, go shopping, a weekend away with your husband to get away from the situation. But it can also pay for healthcare products, incontinence products, things like that. So it covers a broad range of things, but we have been successful in getting that. I believe we're up to last year, the state, without us asking, which was thrilling, gave us an extra $500,000 for that fund. So I believe we're at about $1.5 million right now for caregivers in Missouri to apply for caregiver support funds. And like I said, there's no financial, you don't have to be below a certain income level to qualify for this. You just have to have the person living with you and have a need. And so, for a caregiver to just get out of the house for half a day or a full day or a weekend with their husband, it can really be a lifesaver for these people because it is 24/7, 365 days a year. It's exhausting.
That's so true. It's so true. One of the things that has kind of come up, obviously, recently that's kind of concerned us a bit is the Medicaid cuts.
Oh, yes.
And so as the state budget gets a little bit tighter, COVID funding's ending, a lot of things are beginning to tighten up, and we think it's going to tighten up next year quite a bit.
Yes.
A lot of families who have someone diagnosed with Alzheimer's, unless they're just significantly well off, oftentimes that individual, they start looking at Medicaid to potentially help with long-term, caregiving, that sort of thing. is the Alzheimer's Association looking at that and talking about that as well?
Yes. I'm going to talk about sort of two aspects of that, I guess is the best way for me to phrase that. The first aspect is education, and we don't do education on Medicaid and options and all that kind of stuff. But one of the first things that comes out of my mouth is you need to get to an elder care attorney because there are so many myths out there about Medicaid that are not true. But only a lawyer trained in Medicaid law can help you with that. I mean, I've talked to people who've said, oh, well, my insurance agent. I go, no. You need to talk to an elder care attorney who understands the law behind Medicaid because there are just so many myths out there about what you can do with Medicaid, what you can't do with Medicaid, what you need to spend with Medicaid, what you can't spend with Medicaid, et cetera. So that's one of the first things. For us, it's education. The second thing that we're doing is continuing to advocate to fight those types of cuts in Congress. And we sort of do a lot of that work behind the scenes. It's not a legislative priority that's in front of our faces. We're basically letting Congress, kind of handle that. But we work sort of behind the scenes in the halls of the House and Senate buildings to try to make sure that members of Congress, members of the legislature here in Missouri understand what those impacts are. Because unless you're an individual who's had a direct connection, unless you're an individual who's been affected by this, you really don't understand.
You'd mentioned that earlier on the unpaid caregiver cost.
Yes.
Are there any numbers on that at all?
I do have numbers on it. That's one of the numbers I don't have off the top of my head.
It's big, though. I'm assuming.
It's big.
Yeah.
It's big. That was the other thing I was going to mention. We do have a program that is just actually starting to roll out in Missouri. It's taken time because these things take time, but we did get CMI, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, which is another entity, to agree to take a look at a different model to navigate the Medicare and Medicaid system. Because I don't have to tell you, navigating it today is like a mouse maze.
Yeah.
And what you do is you go this way and you hit a wall, and you go that way and you hit a wall. And what we want, our intent by proposing this new navigation model was to streamline that, to make it easier for people to navigate their way through the system. Okay, mom fell and had to go to the emergency room. Now, how do I navigate my way through the Medicare or the Medicaid system without hitting all those brick walls? And so there's something called the guide model that is just beginning to start to roll out. And one of the reasons that it's taking so long, you're familiar with this kind of stuff. We started with an organization to help us work through that. And what ended up happening was there were medical organizations that said, no, we're not going to sign that contract. And so we sort of had to take 3 steps back and say, okay, we've got to take a different approach to this because we're running into our own brick walls because, like Mercy goes, nope, we're not signing that. And so we're finally getting to a place where we said, okay, we're going to throw that contract out the window and we're going to take a different approach to this. So it's rolling out very slowly, but the intent is, isn't there a better way? Isn't there a way that's smoother to get through this maze so that people can find their way to help and find their way to support resources and find their way to coverage without it being as not so crazy as it is, and it is.
The biggest challenge for us is that there's a large group of people that fit in the middle. They're not Medicaid. They're not. They're better off financially, but they're not so better off financially that they can afford to pay out of pocket a great amount to cover the cost of the home care side of it. And so there's this folks that unfortunately what happens is because they don't have the support coming into the home, and there's 5 main pillars that we kind of look at, and that's is the home safe for them? Yes. Is there things that we can change? Are they taking their medications properly? Are they eating enough and eating regularly enough? Are they exercising, and do they have social support? And oftentimes, with or without a disease process, just the aging process without those 5 pillars, people are more apt to go into a higher level of care, whether that's an independent assisted living, skilled nursing facility. That, unfortunately, because that little piece is missing, that little bit of support, it's racing people to one end of the spectrum, which is oftentimes, they need to go into a skilled facility that at minimum is $120,000 a year, that outpaces most of their retirement. Then they're forced into the Medicaid world, and with all the cuts coming, we just don't know what's going to happen.
It's frightening, is the word I'll use, and we're going to keep fighting that to the extent that we can. It's just a really difficult. It's a difficult situation, when you find yourself in a political and economic environment that we're in right now, where, people that don't need the money are getting the money, and people that need the money aren't getting the money. So that's my political commentary for the day. I have to be really careful.
But that the problem is that, and I've heard this many times, that we're kind of in a sick health system rather than a wellness health system, and that prevention it really is an answer. And part of, in my opinion, this is just John Ray opinion here, but in my opinion, it feels like if more was invested in the preventative side, which is just adding just a little bit of support in that home for that middle group, right? Yes. So that might be, Medicare expands into this world a little bit and says, this many hours a week, if you qualify, you have to qualify for it, that sort of thing. But then you can have somebody come into the home, it's covered, to help with the medications, the food, the exercise, the social interaction, to help keep these folks out of nursing homes.
We have another piece of legislation that for the moment has, I hate to use the term back burner, but for the moment is not one of the top 2. But it's the Caregiver Support Act. And that is an act that would do exactly what you're talking about. It is intended to provide a level of financial support to people who are caregiving for someone in that group that you're talking about, so that they can get the person engaged in social activities, that they can bring someone in to help with physical exercise or therapy, that they can get, that middle ground where they're focusing more on prevention and able to, delay to the extent possible, because we know, and this is very exciting stuff, we do know that the 5 things plus 5 more that you talked about do delay the onset, and they do slow the progression of the disease. And so, we call it the 10 ways to love your brain, but one of them is sleep. I have said to so many, if somebody walks up to me and says, I can get by on 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, I go, bad
You're going to pay
idea.
for that one of these days.
Really bad idea. Yeah. And, they kind of look at me kind of funny, and I go, you are not leaving your brain enough time to put the trash out to the curb.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you sleep.
It's such an American thing to say.
People
too,
don't know. Yeah, it's like, I'm bragging about I don't need any sleep. But your brain needs time to put the trash out to the curb. And that's, if you're getting a good night's sleep, the brain itself is clearing that amyloid plaque and putting it out in the trash bin at the curb. And so don't brag to me about not needing sleep. And now some people only need 6 hours. Some people need 10. And, so I've been asked that question a lot. How much sleep do I need to get? Well, you have to figure that out.
Right.
I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is 4 hours isn't enough because your brain needs time to clear the plaque.
Right.
And so sleep, challenging yourself, some kind of exercise. And it's more about moving than it is about necessarily walking a mile every day.
Right.
But sitting in a recliner with a bag of potato chips is not the solution. Mm-hmm. So you need to do something. You need to get out. Socialization is absolutely critical. And, I always say, volunteering for anything. The worst thing that people do when they retire is sit in a recliner and eat potato chips and watch TV. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, we've got all of these organizations that are dying for volunteers. Yes. And I always say, I don't care if you're pushing wheelchairs at Mercy or you're helping at a food pantry one Friday a week, you're getting out.
Yeah. And having purpose.
Yeah. And you have a purpose and you're talking to people. Yeah. And that makes a huge difference. And diet is really critical. It's really important. And I'm not going to tell anybody not to have ice cream. But you need a balanced diet and some, regular, and you need to make sure that you're, avoiding diabetes, getting your blood pressure under control. All of those things are absolutely critical. So, yeah, I believe that if we can get through this ASAP Act and maybe the ADAPT Act this year, that we'll have the Caregiver Support Act back on the front burner again. I hope.
That would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the direction that you're going, what are you the most excited about?
Ooh, that is a wonderful question. I am incredibly excited about the pipeline of early diagnostic tools. We have more blood tests coming that should increase access to diagnosis for people, particularly in rural areas, which are underserved today. Mm-hmm. We're even looking at things like retinal fluid. I mean, some of this stuff is pretty amazing when you think about it, that they could actually take just a minuscule microscopic drop of your retinal fluid and put it under a microscope and tell you what stage or not of this disease you're at. So I'm very, very excited about some of these early diagnostic tools that are not as expensive, that are less invasive, that are going to be easier to access for people, because we don't all live close to Washington University in St. Louis. At least I don't. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about the pipeline of medications that are coming. I hope we can get the increase in funding that we're asking for. I'm hoping we can get back some of the funding that's been cut at the NIH for research on all diseases, quite frankly, because they all have an impact on this particular disease. But I'm very excited about that. Right now, I'll throw a couple numbers out just because it's fun. Right now, there are 165 clinical trials going on medications alone.
Wow.
It's a big number. I'm excited about the fact that we have this thing called AAIC, which is the Alzheimer's International Research Conference every year. This past year, it was held in Toronto, and I wasn't there. But we had about 5,000 people in Toronto in person from around the globe, 63 countries.
Wow.
And we had 2,000 more people virtual. And the fact that we have gotten to this place, it's sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association, the fact that we have gotten to this place where we are globally sharing all of our learning instead of, don't look at my paper, don't look at my research, I don't want you to know. We're not there. We are being very open and very transparent. If I learn something here, I share it with my colleagues in Germany and the Netherlands and Japan and China. And that's a wonderful thing. That's just going to accelerate our work toward a cure someday. But the fact that I never thought, I'll be honest, I never thought that when I started on this journey that I would see the day when there were actually 2 drugs that slowed the progression of the disease. And they work, which is really, really exciting. One of the gentlemen was from St. Louis, and he drove from St. Louis to Washington, D.C., and he was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's 10 years ago. He was articulate. He was with it. He was on the ball. He drove the car himself. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but but he was great. He was articulate. He was wonderful. You know what he did? He changed his lifestyle. When he got that diagnosis, he started eating better. He started exercising. He started finding ways to challenge his brain. He started socializing more. He basically completely changed his lifestyle. And 10 years later, if you ran into him on the street and started talking to him, you would have no idea. 10 years. That's really exciting stuff. And we just finished is not the right word, presented the results of a study that was sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association called U.S. Pointer. And what U.S. Pointer did was it proved that the results of a study that had been done in Finland several years ago that demonstrated that lifestyle changes have an impact on the onset timing and the rate of progression of this disease. And so the Alzheimer's Association went ahead and started their own study because they knew that they wouldn't get a pharmaceutical company to do this research because there's no benefit for a pharmaceutical company, right? Yeah. So the Alzheimer's Association went ahead and initiated this study called U.S. Pointer. And in fact, they presented the results at AAIC in July, August, and it confirmed the results that the Finland study had shown, which is exactly what you're talking about. Sleep, lifestyle, exercise, eating right, all have a significant impact. And so we are really focusing on that as an association now and really pushing that. and then the other aspect, the flip side of that is with 165 medications in the pipeline, one of those is going to pop. And, so there's more coming behind lecanemab and donanemab. And I'm excited about that. I mean, there's just not one thing I'm excited about.
That's great. It's a good thing to have. So what's the best way a listener really wants to support Alzheimer's Association? What's the best way they can support you?
Two ways, and it really kind of depends on, we all have our sort of individual preferences on how we want to handle supporting organizations like ours. One great way is to form a team for the Walk to End Alzheimer's, like you guys did. I'll throw out some more numbers because these numbers are incredible. In 2024, nationally, the Walk to End Alzheimer's raised $100 million for research. $100 million across all 50 states. And we turned around and spent that $100 million on research. And so supporting the Walk to End Alzheimer's, whether you donate to somebody else's team like Marcia's or like Haven's, is a great way to support the cause, because that money goes mostly to research. The other way is just to support the cause itself. Generally, a lot of people set up memorial funds, lifetime donation type funds, and that money then goes to support everything from research all the way to manning the 1-800 number, which is a tremendous source of support. If you wake up on Christmas morning at 3 a.m. and you are a caregiver and you just don't know how you're going to get through the day, you can call that number and just vent. And they will talk you through it and listen. If you're looking for a support group in another state, because maybe I was a long distance caregiver. My mother was in Wisconsin and I lived in Connecticut, and I flew back and forth from Connecticut every 2 weeks to take care, to monitor her progression and make sure she was being well taken care of. But let's say you need to find a support group in another state because you're caregiving long distance, or you need to find a support group in your state and you don't know how to find me, or you don't know how to find the Alzheimer's Association in Springfield, you can call that number. You can call that number and find medical resources. You can call that number and find a ton of resources, and they can just also talk you through. If you're about to jump off a building, they'll help you. Supporting the walk is the best and easiest way. And the other thing that we are able to tell people is that is also the easiest way to try to keep that money local. Because a lot of people, it's the first question they ask. I'd love to donate, but I don't want it going to, some university in Florida. I want it to stay here. Well, if you donate to the walk in Springfield, we have a way to make sure that that money is dedicated to Missouri. So, and if you donate a gift, a memorial fund or a gift, you can also designate the geography that you want that money to go to. So there's several ways to do it, and there's an easy way. If you go to alz.org online, it'll walk people through how to make a donation, the different ways to make a donation, how to specify where you want the money spent or how you want the money spent. So there's several ways. It's a great question.
If people are wanting to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association, how do they do that? And what different ways can people get involved?
Get in touch with somebody that you know that's already involved with the association, and they'll drag you along to some event. They'll drag you along to the walk committee, or they'll, take you and have you sit down at a tabletop event and just listen. So we need volunteers to do tabletop events. We need volunteers to help us with the walk. The walk to end Alzheimer's takes a lot, takes a lot of resources to pull that off with 1,200 people. Raising as much money as we do. And then there's the whole advocacy aspect, the whole legislative aspect. I'm always looking for people to join my congressional team. Each ambassador has a congressional team. And the beauty about joining a congressional team is it doesn't take any time, right? I'm the one with the monkey on my back. I'm the one that's got to get hold of the district office. I'm the one that's got to make the appointments. I'm the one that's got to send the emails. But if you're on my congressional team, all I may do is ask you to do one social media post a month because I stink at social media. All right. You can do that for me. You can help me out. You can sign on to a letter that's going to a district office or going to the national office in Washington. And so it requires very little of your time to be on my congressional team, but it's another advocate voice.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Just a host of information. You've inspired me. I know that. And I think a lot of people, when they think Alzheimer's, they think hopeless. And you've really helped me understand that there's so much hope out there.
There's so much hope. I'm just loaded with hope because we've made so much progress. And when I look at the number of clinical trials we've got going on, and I look at the quality of researchers that we have across the globe, and the research that they're doing, and the things that we have already learned, and the only thing that's a little scary is the stuff that we don't know yet. But what we have learned already in the last 20 years is incredible stuff. And there is so much to be hopeful for. And I'm really grateful that I've been put in the position that I've been put in because I have learned. I'm a learner by nature, but I have learned so much. I mean, before I started doing this, I didn't understand how a bill went through I didn't understand how it got started. I didn't understand how it went through the congressional process. I didn't understand how it got approved. And learning all that and understanding the levers to pull and who to talk to and who has the power and then topping that all off with the gratitude that people have. I have one fast example, and I'm going to try not to cry. I was on Capitol Hill. I had visited Congressman Billy Long when he was 7th District, and he was a tremendous advocate for us. And I miss him. But I was leaving his office, and I was all by myself that day because the rest of the Missouri delegation had other obligations, other representatives they had to see. And I'm a big girl, so that was cool. I can go see Congressman Long by myself. I'm leaving his office, and I'm going down Capitol Hill. And I'm going across the sort of the Capitol, the terrace of the Capitol down to where the buses were picking us up back then. And they've changed that whole process, but that's beside the point. And this Capitol policeman starts walking toward me like really fast. And I've been a goody two-shoes my whole life. And I'm looking around going, oh, did I cross a barrier? Oh, this is not going to be good. This is not going to be good. I don't know what I did, but I did something. And when we go to Capitol Hill, we wear these, we call them the beauty sashes. They look like, beauty pageant sashes. They're purple, and they have Alzheimer's Association and AIM written on them, and you can spot all 1,000 of us a mile away because we're wearing these purple sashes. I was still wearing my purple sash, and this policeman is still walking toward me at a real fast clip, and he gets up to me, and of course I'm going like, I don't know what I did. And he just looks at me and says, I want to thank you. He said, my grandmother just died of Alzheimer's, and I want to thank you. And he pulled back the sleeve of his uniform, and he was wearing a purple bracelet. I'm doing okay. I'm holding it together. But it's, boy, those moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can do this for another 15 years because those moments are worth it.
Well, they're lucky to have you. We're all grateful. We're all grateful that you're doing the great work that you do, and we really appreciate it.
I love it. You can't tell that, though. No, I love it. I love every minute of it. Keeps me going. It fills my bucket, as they say.
Yeah.
So everything that I do for the association energizes me.
I can tell. Yeah, I can tell. It comes through for sure.
It's good because it's something that's much greater than me. So
yeah, but you're definitely you're building your legacy for sure. So I appreciate that.
well, thank you, and thank you guys for what you do. Your work is very, very important.
Well, we appreciate everyone who gets to jump in and help with the elder care community of any way possible, because unfortunately, there's just more need than there is help.
Absolutely.
At this point.
Absolutely. And you know, until the political situation changes, it's going to take a while before it gets better.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we just have to keep pushing.
That's right. We
Keep
circle
pushing.
the wagons,
Keep pushing.
educate, and we get people involved.
Yes.
And there's nothing better than working to help ourselves too.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much that even individuals with the right information can do. There's so much power out there.
There is.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And we'd love to stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at In Good Company Elder Care Podcast.
You can also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IGC Pod, and on TikTok at IGC Elder Care Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to In Good Company Elder Care in Your Backyard. I'm John Ray, and I've been joined by my amazing co-host, Spencer Ernst. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alex Wallace, for helping bring this show to life. Until next time, take care, and remember, you are always in good company.